I grew up in the way backwoods of Upper Michigan, just outside of a little town called Champion. Now, I grew up in a house my dad built out of cinder blocks, so I guess you could say it was more of a shack. But growing up that way, we grew a lot of the food we ate. We lived off the grid, didn't have electricity, didn't have much of anything, to be honest with you. It wasn't a bad way to grow up, and growing things to this day brings back a lot of fond memories about my childhood. So in today's video, I'm going to build an indoor growing station for microgreens and for seed propagation for growing things out in the greenhouse or out in the garden. I hope you enjoy the build. So for my growing station, I'm going to need a base, someplace to put it that I can put all my seeds and stuff I need for growing microgreens indoors. And to do that, I'm going to build a buffet of sorts. I'm just using some yellow pine I bought from one of the big box stores. Now I've already run it through a planer, and I used a track saw to straighten one edge and then straighten the other edge on the table saw. Now rather than getting clamps out and getting all crazy with it, I'm just using a 3/8 paddle bit to create some pockets that I'll use to pocket screw the top together. Once my pockets were cut, it was pretty simple just to glue it up, stick it together, and run the screws in. Now the lower you put the angle on your pocket screws, the better off you're going to be. It will want to pull the board up on you when you're trying to screw the thing together. So once I had it all screwed together, I cut off the ends and gave it a light sanding. And this will be the top. So I wanted to do a little round over on it just to keep those sharp edges from getting anybody when they're working around the stations. So I laid out where I wanted the legs to hit on the outside, I guess for lack of a better way of putting it. And I wanted to make some drawer boxes or a frame for some drawer boxes to go in. Now in hindsight, I probably would have done this a little differently, but since I was building on the fly, I just dealt with what was in front of me and made the best decision I could at that moment. So in this case, after building the frame for the drawers, I just took some 2x8 and I cut it to the particular height I needed and added some pocket holes to it and just dropped it in place, making sure everything was square on the frame, and then put it back on it. Now at this point, since this really isn't what the whole build is about, I'm going to skip forward a little bit here. I cut some tapers for the legs and then planed them out with Tony Rulo's little beautiful in-shave plane, and then added the legs to it and then added a shelf to the build. So that's, pretty much it. Off camera I made some drawer boxes out of some plywood and some fronts for it, and then I gave everything a nice solid coat of lacquer. Top got 2 coats of lacquer and then wax coat just to keep the moisture and stuff off of it. So now it's on to the seed propagation or microgreen station, and in this case I made the base and the shelf out of plywood, and then the top pieces and the rims that go around it I made out of some leftover yellow pine I had from the 2x8s. So after I had everything cut, I made a little apron around the bottom of the plywood to hold it all together. And then on the top, I want to create a little rim around this bottom shelf. Now that rim is going to be what keeps all the trays in place. They don't get jostled around or moved. Now this is the shelf that goes in between there. There's the second shelf. And for this one, I needed to drill a hole in each end and add some extra support underneath because I'm not going to put any apron pieces, I guess, across the front or back of it. So instead, I put them through the center of it where most of the weight's going to be anyway. Now the holes in the sides are going to be for a rope that comes through that lets all the lighting for this to be adjustable. When you're propagating plants and they sprout, you want the light you're using to be really close to the plants. Within 2 or 3 inches is really optimal. Now you don't have to go out and buy fancy grow lights. In my case, I'm just using $11 shop lights and then 2 $6 light bulbs that are daylight bulbs, 65 Kelvin lights for them, and that works absolutely fine for microgreens or seed propagation. There's really no point in going and spending a small fortune on grow lights. Now after I got the bottom painted and the shelf painted, I needed a way to kind of hook all this together. So to do that, rather than getting too fancy, I just made a simple leg that moves up and a frame that holds the base together. If that made any sense whatsoever, I'm glad you got that. So that's how it works right there. It sits on the base. The shelf will be screwed to the middle of it. Now, to adjust everything or adjust the lights up and down, I want to have some easy way of doing that. And instead of trying to rig up some kind of fancy pulley system, it's just easy to put a simple locking gear together. So when I move the lights up, it clicks and locks in place, and when I move them down, I just have to pull the little clicker out of the way of the gear teeth. Now for this I'm using plywood, and I did draw it up in SketchUp because it was just easy, and then I printed it out and glued it on a piece of plywood and cut it out on the bandsaw. And as you can tell, the bandsaw is a little bit wide, or the bandsaw blade is a little bit wide for this project, but we made it work. I do need to get some new bandsaw blades ordered. Now the assembly of this is pretty simple, so I'm not going to walk through the whole thing. After I cut it out, I drilled a hole in the center of it, 1 inch in diameter, and then shoved a 1-inch dowel in the end of it. And that 1-inch dowel went through 2 pieces of plywood with the hole in the center of it so I could put a rope through. And I used a round ball that I had in the shop. Now to attach it to the cross member at the top, I just used some glue and some nails. And that worked just fine. So the last thing I need to do is attach the top member to the frame that I just built. And if you can't tell, that top member's got a little twist in it, but it's the only 2x4 I had left in the shop, so I had to use it and just kind of force things into place. It worked just fine. Now once I had the stanchions screwed on from the top, I also screwed them on from the bottom of the shelf. There is going to be a bit of weight on here, and I want it nice and secure. And then I built these little plywood ladders to hold the light fixtures, and then ran a rope up one side, up through the top, through my little gear clicker rope razor pulley thingy, and then back down the other side. And that was a super fancy double knot. Now on the top piece I just used a couple of screws that go through the rope to hold it in place, and then gave it a test, and it worked just fine. I am using halogen lights at this point. I will switch to LED as soon as I can get some ordered off of Amazon. But for all intents and purposes, my light raising mechanism works great, and at this point I'm ready to take it out to the office and put some seed trays in it and get some things growing. Now even with the weight of the lights on here, it turns relatively easy and it locks in place, so I don't have to worry about that. And then when I want to unlock it, all I have to do is give it a little bump, and it comes right down. It works wonderfully. This is also handy because I like to water my plants almost daily, so it's easy to raise the lights out of the way and give them a spray with my little pressure sprayer. And there they are, doing pretty good. So these are all seed propagations. I got some for hydroponics and some for the greenhouse, and they will be going out there shortly. I also am growing some microgreens, and you'll see those pop up in a video here before too long. Anyway, I hope this gave you guys some ideas if you're interested in growing things indoors, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I certainly appreciate you watching. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It really helps. And if you know somebody who does some gardening, share the video with them. This might give them some really good ideas about getting their seeds started earlier, or possibly even jumping into microgreens. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. You'll not want to miss all the fun projects I have planned for this year. We'll talk to you later.